This year, we really wanted to highlight the importance of talking in managing our mental health and well-being overall, really, but especially at work. So to get the conversation started today, we're going to hear from Richard de Gruchy, who is our legacy director and has overall responsibility for social value initiatives. And then our two special guests today, who so Alan Fall here and Stephen Coleman, and they are the co-creators of This Is Me, the new podcast that's been launched. So, and jumping straight in, Richard, over to you. Tell us a little bit about how our hospital project is trying to improve mental health and well-being for the future of Jersey's construction industry.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So welcome everybody. So our journey with mental health starts quite a few years ago when we looked at some of the initiatives and some of the issues around construction, and mainly gentlemen in construction and some of the issues they face mental health-wise. So we started on a journey, and with our hospital gave us a bit more of a kickstart into another sort of sector, where we sort of pushed on with Mind Jersey. We took some initiatives to Highlands College. We've integrated a mental health course into their general health and safety course there. So what we've just been doing really from the hospital is just keeping that conversation going, but expanding that conversation now to more and more people. And I think the one thing we talk about is it's just normal. It shouldn't have a title. It shouldn't be mental health or physical health. It's now just part of health. So all we're trying to do across everything, every touch point, every person, every meeting, every conversation, it's just the same. It's just normal. Everyone chats about it. If you want to do it in person, if you want to do it by a little Dropbox, and the comments have been great, doesn't matter to us. It's just about starting the process. And therefore, that was the main reason of bringing these two guys on, who again, they're all just like us, regular guys doing a regular job in a regular place, but have got a great story to tell. So for me, honestly, welcome. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Thank you,
I'll
Richard.
move out of the way and let you
carry on. Next we've got, these guys are Jerseymen and local, well-known, into football, I'd say, fairly into football. And I've had the pleasure of working with both of them, and the whole time not knowing that they were going through anything. Like, you just walk around, everybody's doing their thing, everybody's in their bubble. So it was amazing for me to see them all over the Bailiwick Express and so on, just stepping out of their comfort zone and doing this, which is pretty awesome. So I worked with Alan at Victoria College, which is a secondary boys' school, and Stephen, we've done a few photo shoots and camera shoots, usually trying to grab Steve Featherston on the fly between meetings, and so worked with them, and then saw the podcast and thought, what a brilliant way to bring them on board to the project. So these guys are not mental health practitioners. They're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts and trying to spread the word. I won't say too much because I know you've probably got your spiel down pat now. Very, very slick. Just to say that they've got full-time jobs as well. And so really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come and talk to us. And I'll hand over to you. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and a bit about yourselves.
Thank you very much.
So I don't mind bouncing off you like we do.
Yeah, go on then. Should we just keep taking it in turn? So we don't have the spiel down, to be honest with you. This is sort of continues to be a bit of an experience for us, and we're sort of learning as we go along in terms of producing the podcast. Certainly the first time we've spoken to any sort of audience, so bear with us a little bit. We'll just jump off each other's thoughts as we sort of go through. So this started from Stephen getting in touch with me a few months back now. He was involved in a government initiative, which he'll talk about in a second, years ago, through which Jersey people were sharing their experience of mental health. And as is often the case with things like that, lots was filmed, but very little was used and shared. So Stephen wanted to create a platform through which people could share their experience of mental health so that others can learn from that and benefit from that. You were part of that initiative, so you were one of the guys.
Yeah, so I wasn't meant to be part of that. I was meant to be behind the camera capturing the audio, but someone didn't turn up, and one of my work colleagues in marketing was just like, well, you're so open about your mental health, why don't you go on camera? And I was like, well, okay, fair enough. But it was from that, I was lucky enough to be there for all 5 other islanders and to see all of their journeys. And from someone who suffered with anxiety and depression, I walked away thinking, I shouldn't be the only person that hears these stories. You know I'm going to go back there and I'm going to cut 5 hours of footage to a 3-minute video, and that sucks for me. I think that everybody should see all of their stories. They're willing to tell. So ever since then, I thought, what was the best way of providing a platform to give people like that the choice, the chance to come forward and open up, and that was podcasts, because we're not restricted to 3-minute videos. People listen to it on their way to work, and that was the reasons why.
Yeah, so we sort of started off by talking through our experiences. So Stephen is, as he's already said, quite open and has spoken about his mental health for quite some time. I am learning to talk about it sort of as we go through aspects of my experience. I'm better at talking about other aspects I maybe don't know enough about, I haven't processed enough to really talk in depth. And I think I'll learn probably quite a lot about myself as well as others as we go through this and start recording things on a more regular basis. So at the moment we've got, there's 3 episodes out. One is just like a teaser, if you like, and then one for each of us. And we're starting to schedule episodes with other people. So we've got people that have been in touch with us, we've been in touch with others who we know are keen to speak. We're hoping that will range from islanders with their own mental health experiences, hopefully covering a broad variety of mental health illnesses, as well as getting some practitioners on. So we regularly say, and we spoke to Jenny and you mentioned it at the start as well, we are not experts, we are not people that can provide advice or support as such, other than sharing our own experiences. So we'd like to get people on at some stage that can provide a bit of advice and suggest where people might go to. I don't know if you want to touch upon your episode a little bit without giving too much away.
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody's listened to it, but I talk about the start of my journey. Start of my journey isn't quite like a slow process. It was down to the abuse of cannabis when I was 18. Probably a mixture of things. I went away to California when I was 18. I left college pretty much straight away and went onto a flight to California. First time I've lived by myself, first time I've taken myself away from home. Really enjoyed myself. It was a great time. Probably a bit too much, and I abused my body, and eventually it shouted back at me, and that's how it started. And it started really abruptly, and ever since then I have little spouts of difficult times, and they gradually happen. But this was boom, you've got it. You're going to deal with it straight away, and it was a rocky time. And I remember. Try not to go too much into, because I want you to listen to the episode, but I just always remember that first phone call that I phoned my mum in the morning after I was given that shot, and just begging for some idea of what's going on, because I was completely lost. I thought I was the only person in the world that was dealing with something like this, and as much as she was trying to explain what it was, wasn't quite willing to listen or couldn't quite understand why. So, ended up getting a flight back a couple of weeks earlier than I should have done. And then, the big journey started from there when I was back home, because, as soon as I got back, it was just a huge dip.
Yeah. So what are kind of the symptoms, if you just give a little flavour of
so
how put us in the picture,
so
or
the
on that plane back?
Yeah, the symptoms for me, so the majority of the time I live with anxiety. Depression, I'd like to think I've left that back then. The thoughts, and it's the thoughts when you've got depression. It's you do, as much as people say you feel like you're stuck in a hole and you can't get out. It's exactly what I thought. I didn't think there was ever going to be a day that I'd be back to how I felt. No matter what people said, you've got to start sleeping, and I'm like, I can't sleep, because my anxiety is keeping me awake, and you are thinking about what to do, what can you do, and you think about taking your own life, and all of those thoughts go through your head. And I ended up having to switch off my Facebook, couldn't watch the news, just in case if I'd seen someone who had taken their own life, it was like, that someone had got to that point as well, and they've had the courage to do it, and that's how I thought back then. But yeah, eventually I started. My mum luckily paid for me to do CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, and the first 4 sessions were tragic, crying, bits, couldn't listen. I was never going to get better, and then from the 4 to the next 6, it just did. It gradually got better, and the sort of things that he was telling me to do and I was doing was making me feel better. And now I'm at the end of it. I just, ever since that time, when you have a mental health condition like depression, you really feel like I'd never ever take the fact I had it back. I am a much better person having gone through it than I was before it. So I wouldn't change anything. I feel like us doing this, it's very fulfilling to be able to talk openly and hope that someone, can relate. And we've seen people message us, and the messages we get, that's exactly why we do it. So yeah, I'm on the other side. I want to help people who are first going through it get to the other side. We're not professionals, but if just by talking can help someone, then brilliant.
And that's the idea, isn't it? We're trying to open up that conversation. People should be able to share how they feel with other people, whether that is physical or mental. Come back to Richard's point earlier on. Mine's a bit more of a slow burner. So probably looking sort of 5-6 years ago that I started to realise things weren't quite right. I was eventually diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And that followed sort of like a period of time where I basically was, in particular at sort of social events, something like this is still terrifying, to be honest with you. I'm glad that I was in here before you guys came in. But I wasn't feeling right. I was at family events and unable to talk to my brother, sister, dad that were there. I felt really small and sort of empty, and it just something wasn't right. I wasn't feeling good on a day-to-day basis. I wasn't feeling right at the workplace. Didn't really know how to address it, and eventually just had a bit of a breakdown. So there was a particular family meal where I came away and got in the car and just broke down, and I couldn't figure out, didn't know why I was doing like that, don't know how I responded, don't know why that meal made me feel like that. It was my closest family members were with me throughout that. There was no reason to be scared or distant or whatever the feeling was. I eventually went to some counselling, and I think for me at the time, I felt like I'd ticked the box. I've been to see somebody, I saw a GP, great, I've got a diagnosis. I didn't particularly like the depression diagnosis. I thought that came too quickly at the time. But in my head, I said, right, I've seen somebody, so great, I'm better. Like I've been to my appointment, somebody's told me what I've got, I can deal with that from there. Hid it away for a bit, and then it sort of came back with a vengeance a couple of years later. So I'm back in counselling, sort of more open to that now. So I'm sort of 7, 8, 9 sessions in, and started off with a sort of familiarisation of each other. So building that sort of trust, I guess, and getting a bit of an idea of how I can cope with the anxiety side of things in particular. So little coping mechanisms to help deal on a day-to-day basis. A big part of that actually is just the person I work with. It's through Mind Jersey, basically to help me to realise just how normal anxiety is. We all experience it in one way or another. It might not be through a mental health illness as such, but we experience anxiety for different reasons at different times. So sort of trying to normalise that. Starting to dig down into the roots of it and trying to figure out where it came from, and looking at the bigger picture and the depression side of things and how to sort of deal with that and move forward. For me, in terms of symptoms, it's to be honest with you, things like this, it's walking into environments that are unknown, environments where there are people that I'm not sure about, sometimes people that I'm really sure about. This weekend I've got my partner's grand's 80th, which sounds like a harmless event, and I'm sure it will be, but at that event are family members from her dad's side that I've never met before. I'm going to be walking into somebody's house on the Sunday for a barbecue that I've never met before. So that for me is going to be something that I didn't sleep particularly well last night, probably won't sleep particularly well Friday, Saturday night when I'm thinking about that. But all of this is something that people see quite regularly. And as Stephen said, the messages we've received from friends, but also from people we've never heard of or met or spoken to before, and that's on Ireland and off Ireland, saying they experience the same sort of thing. We just feel it's important we talk about this sort of stuff. If somebody is feeling anxious about a particular event, sharing that with somebody might help.
Yeah, I think knowing that as well, people can help you. So we've been preparing, talking, and just getting you comfortable with the structure and session. It is awfully hard. I mean, so I'm used to seeing Alan though command a room of like 600 teenage boys, which you're very comfortable doing that thing, but this is new. So made sure that you were really comfortable with the situation, and hopefully I think that's what the message is. Once you make it normal and you make it known that these are the things I'm going through, people will come and help. I think people will accommodate as well.
Yeah,
so.
and lots of people have asked how they can help. So I've had a couple of colleagues at work say, well,
Brilliant.
really interested to hear about it. Is there anything we can do? And for me, I say this in my episode, and I explain this to my family. So I told my family by writing to them, I'm not, in contrary to this, I'm not particularly a talker. So I wrote to them to sort of try to verbalise how I felt and how things were. And in that I said, nothing can change. I don't want people to treat me differently. One of the mechanisms that I use at big events is basically to have a timeout. So it's as simple as it sounds. I basically take myself out and go and have a few minutes, just sort of chill out. That might be, I don't know, that might be masked by saying I'm going to the toilet for 10 minutes. I should just go outside and get some fresh air and chill out. So for me, people having an awareness of that, the fact that that's what I'm doing, to then not question me when I come back, where have you been? Everything all right? Just let me crack on with it. So little things like that by being more open about it, those people around me can understand it and just let me crack on. So that's sort of where we are at the moment. So we're scheduling some guests over the next couple of weeks, hoping to record some more and then get that out. Stephen does all of the hard work behind the scene. I basically turn up and chat to people. Stephen goes away and sorts all the sound and visuals and editing, and then gets it out on the socials. So if you haven't, please do take a listen. I think we'll come on to some questions in a second and hopefully open the floor a little bit to have discussions as well. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to cover?
Yeah, brilliant, as always. We've got the QR codes on these sheets, which we'll hand around later, so you can just zap it and have a listen on YouTube. Also on Spotify or podcasts. I quite like seeing the two of you and seeing the facial cues and all of that, so I prefer the YouTube. But it always looks good, Stephen.
Yep.
I expect nothing less. It's really, really well produced.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so we have shared the link to the podcast. Hopefully, more of you will go and have a look. But we invited people to give comments and write down questions which they want to ask you guys or the room about the podcast, about the topic. There's, I think, 11 questions that I scribed. And so we have this box. Would you like to show them your very nice box of questions there? Look at that. So that's been in the kitchen. And so I've scribed all the questions and put it on there so we can just go through them and have a little chat. So over to you.
Should we go for the first one?
Go for the first one, yeah.
So the first one was, how does your work feel about you talking about your mental health battles? What's the reaction been like? I can start with that one. I've gone into every workplace since openly saying I've got mental health issues. If they don't like it, it's sort of lump it. It doesn't change the ability for me to do my job. Never has done. I know how to control my anxiety. If my performance changes, then fair play. But I don't think so far that my performance has ever changed. I throw myself into all my jobs, and if there was ever an issue, then I probably wouldn't stay. What's the reaction been like work-wise? I mean, I had a meeting pretty much a couple of days after the first episode, which was, it was insane. We got so many messages. It was a mad 24 hours.
Yeah. And
my boss was just like, I didn't know, but is there anything we can do as a team to make things better? And I was like, wow, that's great. No, because my team's great. I mean, I work for government and marketing team, and we have a really great team, good banter. We've got the freedom to walk. For me, a lot of it's like, if I needed to, can I just go for 5 minutes out the door? And at a previous job, you couldn't. It was just like you needed to ask, go to the toilet. It's like, what is this? I feel
makes
stuck.
It worse. Yeah, hemmed in.
But at my work, no, not a lot that I feel like they could do to make it any better.
Amazing.
Vic have been great, to be honest with you. We've had a really conscious push on trying to be a more open and kind environment anyway. Some of the stuff that's come out in the press over the last couple of years about public schools in particular has been very open and has been discussed about Victoria College over here. And we want to sort of show that that's not necessarily the case. So in that, when I went back to counselling, sort of tail end of last year, I went and spoke to the head teacher and a couple of other senior staff and just let them know that that's what I was going through and that I felt it appropriate, as another of my colleagues had done, to sort of share that experience with others one way or another. I then spoke to them more recently about the podcast. Say a few months ago it was a concept, and then it very quickly came around, didn't it, about 5-6 weeks ago. So it went from idea to episodes are coming out. So I went in and had that conversation. They were very, very supportive. The head's given me time today to come down and speak to you guys so that we can sort of continue to share that message. So they've been great. In terms of reaction, I think I was most worried about parental and student reaction, because you're just very unpredictable, and you've got 680 teenage boys and their parents and our colleagues, and the reaction's been great. Some kids that have sort of just come up and said, I don't want to be weird and say I've listened to your podcast, but I have, and I think it's a really cool thing that you're doing. Some that have been a bit more open in talking about it, and then as a result are sort of seeking a bit more support themselves. A couple along the way, parents, teachers have sort of said, well, are you going to share all your experience, because obviously the position you're in? I said, yeah, that's the plan. My episode, I think I sort of bumbled my way through a little bit. Jenny referred to her notes. I basically take notes to the podcast that I can process what I'm trying to say and work through the things that I wanted to cover, and still don't cover it all. But I think as we go through, there'll be more things that will come out, and maybe some might feel that's not appropriate, but I do. We talk to our boys at school a lot about being open about the mental health and their health in general, and trying to seek support where they need it, whether that be academically, behaviourally, or from a wellbeing perspective. I'm trying to role model that, I guess. If I can't do that, how can I expect them to? So reaction's been really good. Work for me is sort of like a safe place. It's somewhere that I can focus, and I can stand up in front of 680 boys and talk about something that I'm knowledgeable about and prepared for. So that's somewhere where I'm sort of, I don't know, maybe it's like a control thing where I am focused and other things don't quite come in as much. So work has been great.
When you get a new class at the beginning of a new term, that's obviously all new.
Yeah.
But is it because the environment's safe?
Yeah,
Not the issue?
They're coming into my classroom, into my environment. So that is easier for me. I do a lot of work. I'm the head of sixth form, so I do a lot of work going out to other schools to talk to them about our school, and that we can be an option for them if they wish to join us for sixth form. So they're slightly different environments, but again, it's rehearsed, it's practiced. I've produced a presentation or a script, and I've gone through it, and I've run it a number of times. So that familiarity is still there in one way or another. So I sort of latch onto that as opposed to the new environment. And ultimately, I sort of think in my head that if I go to one of those other schools, the ones who don't want to listen are already not listening. The ones who do are listening because they want to know more. So hopefully, at least I can engage with that. But what I think both of us have been supported at work, haven't we? Feel like we've been accepted, and it's not changed anything, which I think was important for me.
Yeah, really important. All the role modelling I think that you're doing, it's great stuff.
You go for a second.
Next one.
Yeah, so the English are well known for having the stiff upper lip, not openly expressing their feelings. How do you think this affects people with mental health issues, or is this an older generation thing? So we touched upon this in the podcast a little bit. So I spoke about in one of the podcasts about the fact that I've gone on a mental health first aid course, which I think some of you guys have. You were baffled by that. You were amazed that it was a thing that existed, thought it was fantastic. But we sort of touch upon the man up culture and sort of that approach that has existed, might still exist. I don't know that it's a generation thing in terms of it's just what older people think. I think it's something that we sort of tell ourselves. When I speak to the students at school, there's a couple of things. One, they might not be willing to show that they are struggling with something because of fear of being judged. So I don't know that it's a generational thing. Often students will often say, well, other people might need that support more than me. I'm okay, I'm fine, but you're not. You're struggling with something, therefore some support might be beneficial for you. So I don't know that it's an old generation thing. I definitely think that man up culture, the stiff upper lip thing still exists. I remember.
Definitely does.
Yeah, I went for breakfast with a few mates a few weeks back, some big cricket fans, and one of them referred to Monty Panesar as being when he went cuckoo, or a phrase along those lines. So Monty Panesar withdrew himself from cricket for mental health reasons, and then he realised that I was sat next to him and sort of checked himself. So we can't say that anymore, can we? And we ended up having this big conversation about exactly that. That initial response and how that can have an impact upon others, and there might be someone else sat around that table who was really struggling, but then felt like they couldn't discuss that. And we got into a big discussion, but I think at the time there was, even within the cricket commentary, and we're talking the last sort of 5 or 6 years, in the cricket commentary, and somebody said he needs to drink a cup of cement, he needs to toughen up. And that was on widespread sports media. So I think it exists. I don't know that it's generational. I think it's something that is sort of ingrained that we need to sort of battle away at, and hopefully we can chip away at that a little bit.
Yeah, we do say in the podcast about the people that who haven't experienced it, find it very difficult to understand it. So you spoke about Monty Panesar. There's also that tennis player that also of withdrew from press conferences because of mental health reasons. Now I watched that and I was thinking, fair play. Why wouldn't you? You would withdraw from a competition if you hurt yourself.
Yes.
She's withdrawing from press conferences because she struggles to do it.
Pain, isn't she?
Yeah. So why should we force them to do it? But my reaction is completely different to someone who has no idea of how it feels. Whereas they will go down the route of, God, you get paid so much money, just get on with it. Like, yeah, but you don't know the damage that could be causing. But yeah, generation. See, my experience with the whole Man Up, unfortunately, does come from the generations. I can see it. My granddad's a lot different to my parents, and then my brothers are very, very different to my parents. And I can sort of see it.
I think it is breaking down, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where it's now much more okay to talk about it. I mean, we're all here today talking about it at varying different kind of like levels of comfort. So
we talk about 12 years ago when I first experienced it. I thought I was alone because I didn't think anybody else had gone through something like that because no one spoke about it. If you had it now, you'd be like, well, it's loads of people. There's first aid. All sorts.
Brilliant. Okay.
Right. I'm on 3.
Go next, taking turns.
Alan's got to go back to school, I'm afraid. I'm just doing the
Can we talk about the difference of mental health awareness in different cultures, comparing how it is in Britain, Spain, etc.? So we spoke about this before, and don't feel like I can comment on the different cultures. I can only comment on Jersey's culture because I've only ever experienced it in Jersey. But we thought maybe we could open up the question to the room.
Yeah, maybe just repeat it again, sorry, just in case some people haven't heard.
Can we talk about the difference of mental health awareness in different cultures, comparing how it is in Britain, Spain, etc.?
Yeah.
So, I can only speak for Jersey.
So we've got a few people from different cultures here. Is mental health as spoken about in Spain? Has things improved over the years, or is it still really hard to say anything and speak up?
Go a little further than Spain. Middle East.
Oh, you've gone everywhere. That's
so
right.
Middle East, it's hidden. So disablement, mental health, and things like that are more hidden. It's not in the forefront. So when you try and do things like this and do behavioural programs, which have been doing this for say 15, 18, 20 years, it's been mixed in there. It changes from country to country, and what their understanding is, because it's more hidden and it's not at the forefront. Whereas the past 18, 20 years, say in the UK, it's been more at the forefront, but it was under a different guise. So it's called occupational health, and then it went to behavioural studies, and it goes into mental health. But there's one mainstream thing that's wrong with it is it's not law to do it through, say, construction, like doing first aid or fire marshal or stuff like that. It's only in the good practices. And then companies start using the good practices to bring it in. How they bring it to that, it has to be law for certain things. Then it brings it right to the forefront. Yeah.
I think law and maybe education as well. Law is definitely a big one, regulation. It makes it kind of, commercially sound for businesses to go and invest in that. So, I mean, just going back to what Richard was saying before about the construction industry, we worked with Mind Jersey and Highlands College, and we wanted to put on par mental health and physical health and safety. So Mind Jersey spoke to over, I think, 124 of us and students and teachers, trainers, and in that time they created a mental health and wellbeing module, which has been embedded into every construction course. So anyone learning any construction course at Highlands from September 2021 are now going out there thinking this is normal, and hopefully they'll take that as their little toolkit when they go from school to the workplace. Yeah, I think it's really powerful stuff. So it's, you know, it's a journey, but maybe in some cultures they've not started on that journey, or it's just interesting to see how it's happening in other parts of the world, because our team's fairly international.
Yeah.
Who's
I can say
yeah.
about my culture. I'm from Turkey, and so one of the most different culture than all these people here. So in my country, having a mental health issues, people look like you are crazy, or you are not normal, unhealthy, dangerous. So that's the reason why people are afraid of out loud their mental health problems or share with others, because we grow up with a mentality that what others think about you. It is the wrong way. What you are important, not others' thoughts about you. So that's why people are afraid to share their problems. That's why they keep themselves inside, and in a weak point, it just explodes.
Yeah.
In a explosion of psychology. So now in the new technology, I think people are changing. Well, this is now more series, TV series about psychological movies, how people share their problems with psychologists. So we have this spreading all around the country now, so people are more relaxed to share their problems.
Yeah, normalizing it.
Yeah, but before it was just so conservative that we keep all the problems inside.
And that makes it worse, doesn't it?
You have your own health problems that you don't even understand what it is. But sharing the problems is really relaxing.
Yeah, halves the burden.
Exactly.
Still see that in some of the kids at school. You know, they'll come and speak about an issue of some description, and we'll signpost. So if they come to me, I can't give them advice as such, other than signpost them to support. And they'll quite often tell me that, well, they don't need to see a counsellor. They're not crazy. They're not, they're not suicidal. So they don't need to speak to somebody. So I think to an extent that still exists in some parts of our culture as well. But did you say that that's starting to change a little bit? You're starting to see a difference?
Yeah. They're seeing it in the media and in the entertainment industry, I think.
Now people has more acceptance of their problems, and they are more brave to share.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Good.
Yeah.
Great.
The next two are sort of more comments, aren't they? So, well done for sharing your mental health issues and personal experiences. Like you, I started changing things in my life when I had my first child. So that I guess relates to what you were saying, Steve, about Ewan. Making healthier choices, but being more driven to speak up, out, and want to make the world a bit better, easier for their generation. I mean, we touched upon Ewan, don't we, in your episode, your son?
Yeah.
And he's obviously a massive driving force for you to get better, I guess. Seek support.
Yeah, exactly. I'm quite open to say that, only a few years ago I struggled when my son was born, and since then I've had to make massive life changes to make sure I'm okay, because if I'm not okay, then he's not going to get the best version of me, and that I'm not happy with that. I have my own daddy issues, so I mean I've learned a lot from my own childhood, and I know what I do not want to be, and I know what I want to be. So when I feel myself dipping, and I can tell that I've not really given him the best experience of me, I will make massive life decisions, and I do.
Yeah.
because this is very powerful. Your brain is very powerful, and if you don't look after it, then you'll end up finding yourself in a dark place again.
Cool.
But I love my boy; he's lovely. Did you read the second? No. Very brave of you to speak out about your own experiences, especially when you're a school teacher. When I was at school a long time ago, no teacher would dare. The kids would have a field day. Shows how times have changed for the better.
Yeah, the kids have been great. Quite a lot of engaging one way or another, either coming to speak about the podcast or about just the fact that it exists. Some people sort of open up a bit more about their own experience and therefore being able to be signposted towards the school council or external agencies. So hopefully that is something that's changing. There was a colleague of mine that spoke out himself tail end of last academic year, speaking about his experience of depression that helped sort of nudge me along that path myself. So I felt if he was somebody who role modelled that to me and helped me to confront it again and to get back to receiving support, then if I could do the same and have that sort of impact upon somebody else, then I'd be sort of sharing that and passing that along. So I think we are getting there with that sort of stuff.
Do you think it would be different at different schools? I went to a school that I don't think it would be. I still don't believe it would be quite as well received.
I think a lot of people, based on the perception sometimes of Victoria College, would probably say the same about Vic.
Okay.
I'm sure there'll be people with varying opinions of Victoria College. There always is, but they've been very open. So I was a little bit nervous about it in the build-up, but the response was fantastic. I don't know about the schools, but I'd like to think that certainly from a staffing perspective, that support would be there, and that the majority of students would be able to relate in some way. And if they can't, if I am confronted by a student who is unable to process the podcast in a positive way or has negative thoughts about that in itself is a discussion to have. They're entitled to their opinion, and that's important. But even that would still open a conversation to be able to talk about it and the impact that might have on their friends experiencing those things, and how by talking about it we can allow those guys to feel more comfortable. So I don't really know.
No.
Certainly the schools I've worked in, I think it would have been accepted at both. But
nice follow-up question, Stephen. Thank you.
No problem.
So the next one essentially is talking about dropping the word mental from mental health. So the fact that it's just health.
We missed the trustee one.
We'll come back to trustee because he has to get a mention.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Now, we spoke about this the other day, so Jenny shared the questions with us in advance just so we could see it and come into this with a bit more familiarity and feel a bit more comfortable with it. My view is that we should be able to talk about it certainly in the same way that we talk about anything else. So I in the podcast, refer to a knee operation I had. And when I got the injury, I went and got some support via the hospital. I went and got an X-ray and saw a specialist, and then was diagnosed with an ACL rupture. And then I had an operation and a physio, and sort of went through all the steps I need to get through in order to get back to being physically healthy. I want us to be able to talk about mental health illnesses and issues in the exact same way. So this is what I have, this is how I'm dealing with it, this is who I'm receiving support from. So I certainly would like to see a parity in it. I think, I won't speak for you, I'm sure you'll jump in a second, but you like to talk about the fact that it is your head, it is a mental thing.
Yeah.
So I think the word mental isn't a bad word.
I think it's, I don't know if it's the fact that the word mental can have other meanings too. Yeah, like you're saying, it's you're crazy. It's like, well, maybe. No, I'm not. But I don't mind categorising it as mental health so much, and I don't really mind the word mental. But
maybe mind health.
Mind health, brain health. Yeah. Call it whatever you like, as long as we know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
If someone's struggling at work and they go off because of their health, that's fair enough. If someone said to me that, I'd be like, okay, great. I don't, but if someone said to me, oh, I'm struggling with my mental health, talking's great, so you can always talk to me.
Don't change the word, but change the perception.
Yeah, that's where we got to with that conversation. And I absolutely get the point. I think you touched upon it nicely earlier. We don't want that word to scare people from being able to talk about it.
Shy away from it.
So I think it is about breaking the stigma down and making sure that the understanding of the word mental doesn't mean that you are mental. It's more about the fact that the issues you're struggling with are psychological as opposed to physical.
Yeah, and quite serious. So Good. Thanks.
Do you want to go Trusty then?
Go Trusty. I have to meet this guy.
Oh, Trusty, what a
So
guy.
that-
He's got a
So
lot more of a
he's your-
billing than he should have done, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
He's your coach, right? You play for the Roselle. Is it Rovers?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Trusty's one of our coaches. He helps out with Roselle. He's been part of Roselle since he was very young. Used to be apparently pretty good at footy, but I can't believe it. So the question was, good job, gents. Back of the net. Everyone needs a Truscott. Growing up, I played a lot of sport. The coaches we had always knew more about our issues before any family or friends ever did. How important is sport for good mental health, especially for guys? The exercise and the social side. Follow up, what can you do if you're not into teams or sports at all? What do you tell your students? So do you want me to crack
Should
on?
we touch upon Trusty first? So the reason that, for those that haven't listened to the podcast, Trusty is a coach of ours who has engaged really well with the podcast, so sending lots of questions in for us and listening to it and sharing his experience of mental health with us as we've sort of gone through that. And for some reason, he's just the only person that we've named in the podcast. So anyone that sends anything, and we've done that anonymously. So we've shared questions and stories without naming the people, just for their safety, not safety, but for their privacy. But we named Trusty because he's engaged so much and
He
he's somebody that we're quite close
He's
with.
super supportive.
Yeah,
I
he
think,
doesn't
on and
mind
off the
either.
field.
Yeah,
That's great.
definitely.
Trusty's had a positive impact upon my mental health. So when I was going through a particularly sort of poor period, I went away for a couple of weeks and stuck a couple of things on social media, and he just engaged really nicely, at basically taking the mick out of me. But we sort of had a bit of interaction, and from a point of a holiday that I was potentially not going to come back from, that interaction, that discussion just became a bit of a laugh and was something I quite look forward to at the end of each day or sort of the following morning. So he gets a mention in all the podcasts so far. I think we're going to essentially have like a Trusty's Corner where his question comes in each week. He'll probably appear on it at some point. But the question, I guess, is the importance of sport from an exercise and social perspective. For me, it's huge. It's always been something. So I'm currently experiencing sort of going through the root of my issues. When those issues started occurring, a big thing for me was getting stuck into all the things that were available to me, and sport was a massive one. So that sort of followed the whole way through. We've both been heavily involved at Roselle Rovers. Stephen is a captain of one of the sides. I've been involved in playing and coaching. And for me, the physical side of that is huge. I think you're the same, and we'll come on to the back four stuff afterwards. Just a massive coping mechanism for us is to be physically active, both as a catharsis, I guess, as a release of frustration and emotion, to feel physically fit. And then there is the social aspect of it. Now, we don't win many games at Roselle Rovers.
We don't?
But we enjoy ourselves. We have a good time. We've got a good bunch of boys that we spend a lot of time with and celebrate with. And similarly, a ladies team who are far more successful, actually, who are also part of that social circle. Yeah. And we are close as a club. So a massive impact for us. Do you want to touch upon, do you want to link in the back four whilst we talk about it?
Yeah, I can do. I think there is a question though, isn't there, about the back four? We can always leave it for that one.
So yeah, I mean, in the podcast you mentioned that's like the
Yeah.
back four, and not everyone's.
I'll explain
fan,
it on 11, the last one.
Okay, fine.
I think.
Okay.
But what was it? There was another part to that question, which was, what would you do if you don't like sport? For me, I'm always trying to find something to do. Before doing all of this camera stuff for work, I used to work in recruitment, and before that, offshore recruitment up until I was the age of 26. I self-taught myself to do graphic design and web design, and that was whilst I was working, because I just need to do something. Nowadays, when I go home, if I'm not looking after my son, or when I finish looking after my son, I'm learning something completely different. Like podcasting was something I'd never done before. I taught myself how to do that. I just make sure that I'm always learning, and I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a sport. It just has to be something that my brain can engage with. And if it's like you're saying, school's your safe place because you're fully engaged.
Fully absorbed,
I need to be fully engaged to just have that mindfulness, take my brain away from any issues that I might be struggling with. But
it's almost like stopping your brain from thinking for a bit.
Yeah.
And just doing stuff.
I struggle anyway. I'm borderline ADHD, so I mean, if I go on holiday, I put my towel down and I'm like lie there for about 5 minutes. When are they playing darts?
Yeah. What's next?
Yeah, what am I going to do next? So, yeah.
We spoke about this in the week, didn't we? It's finding something you're interested in and engaging in that in one way or another. You know, that could be anything. You've taken up golf more recently. I've stopped playing football as a result of my injury and just trying to spend a bit more time with my partner and outside of sport. That didn't last very long. I basically set myself a challenge of running quite a long way this year for charity. So
Yeah.
I sort of set myself challenges and try to achieve those. So I guess my thing out of sport is more charity-based work that I can sort of throw myself into, whether that's challenges or whatever it might be. It happens that is through a sporting medium.
Yeah. So just a time check. 10 minutes to 10. Yeah.
Fine.
Carry on.
School will start ringing me in a second, I think.
So
Number 7.
What
So
number are we up to?
7, but we sort of
Okay.
touched upon
Yeah.
bits further down, so we can crack on.
Oh, yeah, I think we're
we've
good
seen
then.
mental health awareness grow and championed in workplaces, schools, and the media in the last few years. What do you think it will take, or how can we? Oh no, we did that one.
Yeah,
So that
we
we came on to that one afterwards. Sorry. Did you notice when you started having mental health symptoms, is it linked to big life changes that are outside of your control? For example, becoming a teenager, change in home life, school pressures, or social pressures. So, as I dig down into the root of mine, it is a life change. So my mum left when I was sort of 15, 16, my brother and sister are younger. We all reacted in very, very different ways. I won't talk about them because that's their own sort of personal experiences and the things that they went through. But for me, it was be busy, get stuck into stuff. I didn't know school knew at the time, but obviously they did because my parents had to tell them there was a split and mum had left. They sort of kept an eye out for me and were sort of watching from a distance, if you like, and just letting me off the odd little thing here or there. I didn't know until I went back so I was at Vic myself, I didn't know until I went back to Vic as a trainee that my tutor from back at school said, "Oh, how is everything?" I was like, "Hang on, you knew," and obviously she knew. But then it made more sense when she let me miss afternoon registration, or there were little things that she let slip. So mine was a life change. I then hid that away, ignored it, kept being busy, kept engaging as much as I could through school, university, into the workplace. I don't think there was a particular thing that then caused it to slide, other than perhaps I'd been in work for a couple of years, so things weren't new anymore. University, something was new every year. My teaching qualification was new. My new workplace was new. I was lucky enough to get opportunities to progress at work. After a couple of years, that progression stopped, and I was doing the same thing that I'd been doing previously. And that's when it sort of hit for me that something wasn't quite right. So basically when I stopped being busy. So although we spoke before about being busy and engaging in something, I need to be conscious of the fact that perhaps by being busy, I'm hiding that away a little bit. So trying to find some time to be
coping
free
mechanism.
and think about it a bit more.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so obviously mine started by abusing cannabis, which is, that side of the story. But, I left that when I was about 19, 20, and I lived my life fine. And like I said, things start to come back. And yeah, it can be linked to big life changes. My son is one of them. It completely changed my life outlook. As I said, I've got my own daddy issues, so as I wanted to make sure that I tried not to be like what my dad was like, and completely fell in love with my son. That was a lot of pressure, a lot of stress from my home life, and caused me a lot of anxiety, and then led into a little bit more depression. Had to do antidepressants, but at the end I just had to make big life decisions.
Yeah.
But yeah, you learn when things start to happen. You learn
You
what.
kind of know the triggers are coming.
Yeah,
maybe.
and now I try not to let it get to that stage. I mean, having a son for the first time, never experienced it. Obviously, it was massive. COVID didn't help. So yeah, things in life did make a change. I definitely could have, 100% could have made it a lot better for myself, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And that's on me.
And now you know.
And now I know. And now I'm better. Which is the next one?
9.
I'm newish to Jersey and I find it even harder than any other place I've lived and worked in to make friends here? As locals, do you think that Jersey people are not as keen to make new friends because they already know everyone here? What tips can you give to make friends here? Where do you guys meet most people not from Jersey? I mean, I like to make new friends. I'd like to think I'm quite sociable. For me, I've always found sports. It's not linked to the same person, but sports for me is sort of always found friends. I mean, the sort of group of friends I've got from football change almost every 2 to 3 years. But you know, people leave, but they stay, you know, as your friends, and it's almost like you're renewing your friendships, and your friendship circle's getting bigger and bigger. As I said, I started playing golf during COVID. I've met loads of people at golf. I mean, it's such an individual sport, but you end up just partnering up with people, and you meet so many different types of people, and some people you vibe with and some people you don't, but you know, you meet more and more people. I would say to people, you know, people who are struggling to make friends, if I see that they're just at home all the time, you're never going to make friends sitting at home. You have to put yourself out there.
Take a risk.
Yeah, you have to.
Easier said than done, though, isn't it?
It's hard,
but
common
it's
just try once, I think, and then if that one, you know, I think it's nice when that one person makes eye contact and you kind of go, oh, you're as nervous as I am.
Yeah,
And then,
exactly. It's just taking the leap.
Yeah.
It's interesting because that second time in a short period of time, I've heard somebody say that they've struggled with that moving over to Jersey. I would have said, if somebody had asked me 6 months ago, yeah, I think we're an open community, but then thinking about it, having heard it through this, and then somebody that came along to a group run that I organised, they said they'd really struggled in Jersey and that they didn't feel like it was a particularly welcome place. And I guess there's a potential there that maybe we're a bit siloed in our friendship group. So when somebody comes to Roselle Rovers, they might feel that we're all already mates and therefore it's hard to come in and make new friends within a group that already exists. Whereas I think we would think that we're a really welcome, open environment. So that's quite difficult. I would say that common interest is obviously going to be a way forward. So this person that I met through that running challenge that I'm doing, I set up a group run most Sundays. For those of you that might be interested in running, follow 2022 and 2022 on Instagram. It's for the Grace Crocker Foundation over here. I just have to drop that in there.
I'll send them a link.
Thank you very much. So I organise a group run, and people turn up to that, largely friends, family, but sometimes people from the running community or people that want to engage in a charity event. So we sort of chat away and get to know them little bits as people I'm in touch with more regularly from meeting them through that, because it's a common interest.
Charity is a good way, I think. So, I mean, I'm not new to Jersey, but 16 years ago, it did feel like a hard place to crack. In summer, it's all a bit better. Everybody's out and about, and you know, there's more people to just chat to generally. But charity is another big thing here in Jersey. So get involved if you're not sporty, and you don't have to even do the charity challenges. You can volunteer to, I don't know, timekeep or make the teas and coffees. But I agree with you, you've got to make the effort and take that first step. And that's true anywhere, really, isn't it?
Fly through these lessons.
Easier said than done.
But yeah.
This year's theme for mental health awareness is loneliness. Stephen, when you were in America, how much did loneliness or being in new surroundings perhaps contribute to abusing substances?
Okay, so I'd say the complete opposite. I definitely wasn't lonely when I was smoking weed. It was wanting to be part of the, like, just the way of living over there. So there was a lot of people after abusing substances. I don't think I've ever felt so lonely in my life. Like I said, I felt like I was the only person in the world that was going through it. So I was completely lost, completely lonely. But yeah, I don't think the loneliness led me to abusing substances.
I think we talked about being, you felt like you were alone in suffering and you couldn't talk about it. And that's what we're trying to bust through now, isn't it? To say to people, you're definitely not alone. Here are two very kind of normal, average guys who have been through it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I would say in contrast, I did feel lonely.
Okay.
You know, when I sat at that family meal, again, it was dad, brother, sister, auntie, uncle, cousins, grandma, like the closest family I've got that are from Jersey. I see them regularly. And I sat at that table and I felt alone. I felt really isolated and small and unable to engage. I wasn't alone. You know, those people care about me, love me, have been amazing in their support, following chat to them and the podcast coming out. But I felt lonely. I felt like I was there and I wasn't able to engage with others. So you were far, far away from home, didn't feel lonely, and that wasn't a contributor. And I was at home essentially, and did so. Different experiences.
Yeah.
Should we come on to your back four?
Yeah, so what is the back four, and can you explain it to me? How does it relate to mental health? So when I went to CBT, the way of me getting better was the guy said to use a back four using football. I played football a lot, so the one thing to protect is the goal. The goal is my head, and we put a back four in front to protect their defenders. So it was sleep, family and friends, exercise, and eating well. And back then, when he told me those things, I didn't do any of them because I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to see my family and friends. I didn't want to go to football. I didn't want to eat well. It was all over the place. But he was like, you're going to have to force yourself. I know you don't want to, but just go. You might absolutely hate the whole time, but just keep going, and eventually you'll get better. So I did. I started going back to football. Hated every single minute of it. Really disliked being there. Really disliked seeing my friends and family. Just struggled. Just looking at them all, laughing, and I was in this horrible place. But he was right about, that was from fourth session onwards. It did. Every single time I'd go back, I would have moments where I'd almost catch myself and be like, oh my God, for the last half an hour, I've actually felt all right. And those half an hours turned into hours, and those hours turned into days, and those days turned into weeks. And before I knew it, I completely forgot that I had any issues. So yeah, and now if any of those back four, so if I'm not sleeping well, if I have a particularly busy weekend when I'm out, or I'm drinking and I've not slept anywhere near enough, my body will give me a poke. So at work about 2 months ago, I had not a bad anxiety attack. I know how to control them, but I had an anxiety attack just putting the lights out, and I knew straight away. It's always easier when you know why you've had it, and it was because I just hadn't slept for the whole weekend. So fair play. Thanks for my body for letting me know. Tonight I'm going to go and go to bed early, and then I'm fine. So
in a way, it's a bit like sport, isn't it? When you stretch and you do things well, you don't get injured, and you develop this kind of muscle memory to go, oh yeah, I know what to do when I'm on that field chasing that ball.
Sure.
But with your mental health, now you've got the memory, the muscle memory to kind of say, right, this is coming up. You know what you need to do. So
it's about knowing the things that help you. You can call them your back four from a sporting analogy. You might call them your pillars. It could be anything really. That's something that I learned from your episode, and I think we'll both continue to learn bits as we go through.
That's it.
I know we got there, and all in good time, which isn't bad at all, right?
No.
So thank you very much for coming and talk to us, and for the quality chat. Obviously there's pastries, we can chat some more, but you've got to go back to school.
I'll have to go back soon.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll send around the link again to their podcast and the Wellbeing Pack, which was sent earlier on in the month. So on the back of that, there is a signpost, a directory of organisations that you can go and seek help to. We've got one just upstairs, actually. Our office is above Talking Therapies. So that's a good start there. But yeah, thank you very much. All the best with your podcast. I'm going to continue to listen and tell people. Thank you so much.
Thank you.